Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Iran's news coming out of Nigeria's capital, Abuja. This is Daybreak. And it's time to look at the front pages of the local and international newspapers for you, as promised before the break. I have joining me now Dr. Constance Ikoku, Iran's news analyst, social commentator, and journalist. Good morning, Dr. Ikoku. We also have a guest analyst for today.
Good morning, Adeso. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
It is Friday.
Indeed.
Are you excited?
Very.
I am looking forward to it. Yes, we do have a guest with us this morning. He is Eniola Akinkotu, the Chief International Correspondent of the Africa Report. Welcome, Eniola.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so welcome, guest. And we'll have to begin by looking at this day newspaper. In this day newspaper, the story, Wale Edun, FG surpassed half-year non-oil revenue by 30%, exited Ways and Means. Exiting Ways and Means implies that the government is no longer borrowing from the CBN. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Wale Edun, says the economic reforms carried out by this government has helped it to surpass non-oil revenue by 30%. That seems like a bit of good news, fair achievement, but you want non-oil revenue to be on the same level with oil revenue. That should be the long-term goal, Eniola.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, he also spoke about Ways and Means, which was about 24 trillion under Buhari's administration. And so many economic experts, even the CBN governor himself, said it that on the problems of inflation and all that, the devaluation of the naira was caused by excess naira in the system. So it's good that you see that they're tightening everything, increasing interest rates, just trying to mop up and all that. So it's a good one that they're not relying on Ways and Means as they used to. And on the increase of non-oil revenue by 30%, so it's a good one too, but you look at it that in real terms, you look at that the value of the naira has dropped by over 70%. And so with inflation, the increase in this particular non-oil revenue is not going to be that significant because inflation would have eroded it as well. But it's good. Anyway, any increment is good. It's more money for government, it's more money to implement programs.
When you talk about the increment in non-oil revenue, there's a bit of information here. It said, recently the government in April introduced an emergency bill to boost non-oil revenue. And let's see what that is about. The economic bill was meant to do the following: expand the tax base, improve tax compliance, automate excise tax, review tax exemptions and duty waivers, and recalibrate incentive structure. So we're back to the Lagos model. It's mainly about tax, Adesua.
Yes, but it's important to highlight that this is impressive because Mr. Wale Edun specifically stated that this was not as a result of increased tax, but collection method. He did say that it's because of the collection method and the economy plans put in place, including the emergency bill that was passed for improving the output in the non-oil sector. So we need to state that they are able to do this without increasing tax, according to him, but the method, in collecting taxation. So it looks as if the reforms of the Oyedele Committee, the Tax Reforms Committee, is now beginning to yield some result because the plan is not to increase tax, but to increase the number of people who are to pay tax that have not been doing so previously. So you mentioned some taxes that they are focusing on. So that's great. But like you also highlighted, while we are outperforming in non-oil sector, and we need to look at the oil sector, because we are underperforming in that sector. And there are so many reasons for that. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, just yesterday was speaking about the losses in the oil and gas sector. And I think he put the figure at some 10 billion.
It's on the front page of newspapers.
Yeah, I think he did say 10 billion, $10 billion in the space of January to July of this year alone. So while we are outperforming in non-oil sector, we need to look at the oil sector. As the government, we know, is struggling to get revenue. And we are losing all of that in the space of 5 months. It makes no sense.
Well, federal government expects 19.41 trillion from the Federal Inland Revenue Service in this year, 2024. Our budget this year is 27.5 trillion. Still a lot of financial gap to plug, Eniola.
Oh, certainly. And of course, if you look back at that NEITI report too, it spoke about how Nigeria has lost billions of dollars. I think it's 160 million barrels of crude. I can't remember the exact figure now. And if you look at the...
So I have something, yes.
Okay.
So according to The Guardian this morning, federal government lost $10 billion to oil theft, vandalism in 7 months of this year. Yeah.
And how many arrests were made? How many prosecutions have been coded? How many convictions of these oil thieves? We look at it very critically. So it may seem that some of these people are being, they have some sort of political backing. You're spending over 4 billion monthly on these repentant militants who are helping you to safeguard pipelines, and you're still having this this issue of oil theft on a grand scale. It's appalling, really.
Yeah, lots of work to be done there. Let's move on to, well, we're still on this day newspaper. Actually, there's another story. It's not on the front page, but it is an interesting topic. FMBN disburses 440 billion naira mortgage loans. Then also it refunds 84 billion naira to exiting NHF contributors. Since establishment in 1993, the Federal Mortgage Bank has delivered about 39,000 new homes, about 25,000 mortgages, and over 120,000 micro-housing loans. So over the years, the bank has expanded its products from mortgage financing to housing construction and micro-housing finance. Well, I'm sure many people do not even know about the Federal Mortgage Bank and that there are facilities for you to build your homes or your dream home. And do you know anybody that has a
very huge housing deficit?
Yeah, do you know anybody that has mortgage from the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria?
The few people I know that have been able to access this, they had to pay huge bribes. It was a very, very cumbersome procedure. I have tried myself too. For you to be...
Oh, really?
Yes.
From this bank?
Definitely.
Okay. What was your experience?
I had to give up because at some point, you first of all have to use some of these mortgage banks, and then they say, oh, okay, we'll help you facilitate this, bring this amount of money, bring that amount of money. It's very, very, very difficult accessing that loan. And it's even little. I think it was 15 million, but I think they've increased it recently. But most people still lack access to this initiative. And at the state level, it's even something else. Lagos State is doing something like that. I think Ambode introduced something called Lagos Homeowners Mortgage Scheme. But most of the people who access these things too, they're people who had to know someone in government. It's not open. It's not that easy to access.
Right. I mean, 39,000 homes is paltry. The result shows you that it's almost insignificant in a market as big as Nigeria. This one.
Most of the time when you hear about the Federal Mortgage Bank, it's usually when government is having housing projects. So you hear about them, and it goes to show that they are not effective enough. I'm not surprised about Mr. Eniola's experience in just securing the loans, because usually what you see is that for the average Nigerian to access any sort of loans, is usually Herculean. You have to bring your great-grandmother's tooth. You have to ensure that, your blood is truly red. I may be over-exaggerating, but you get the point that it is so difficult for the average Nigerian to access these loans. So we need to look at the Federal Mortgage Bank again, because when you look at the objectives that set out that bank, and you look at the reality on ground, such as the experiences of Eniola and others, then you can tell the disparity, that they have not lived up to expectations at all.
Right. It's good that you mentioned that they are always active when there is a government intervention. Because 6 months ago, President Bola Tinubu approved, I think, over 100 billion naira for new homes construction over the country. He said that has to be delivered within 18 months, and he called it the Renewed Hope Housing Initiative, something like
across
that.
The country.
And the agencies involved in that was the Federal Mortgage Bank, the Ministry of Housing, has to use a bit of its budget. And then there's a couple of private initiatives also involved in that. So it's good to note that. But a little bit of information for us on Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. For those who still want to try, who can benefit from the scheme? It says Nigerians from all sectors, particularly those within the low and medium income levels who cannot afford commercial housing. I'm sure that even middle class people that are not in low income.
Someone ask you, do we still have a middle class?
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a story for another day. But this low income housing includes civil servants, traders, commercial drivers, and the rest of them. And then there is a percentage that you contribute monthly. It's 2.5% of the monthly basic contribution. That's what qualifies you for access to this loan. How do you obtain the loan? Then a contributor interested applies through a registered and duly accredited mortgage loan. You know, all and on, a lot of processes. I guess it also speaks to what you were saying, that it's difficult to go through the process and get a loan to build a home.
And you must have contributed to that National Housing Fund for a minimum of 2 years. So what happens is that, you know, if you're not in the formal sector, it's very difficult for you to attain that. And those who maybe have not reached that 2-year threshold, those are the ones that are usually very susceptible to being extorted. So they tell you that, okay, we can backdate this for you, but you need to give us so and so amount of money. So it's very difficult.
Yeah,
really.
Complicated situation. Well, let's look at Guardian newspaper. In the Guardian, regions, citizens languish amid proliferation of political SPVs. This article calls it development commissions without development. So this is in reference to all the development commissions that have been coming on board in Nigeria many years ago, following the Boko Haram crisis and the devastation of the Northeast region and some parts of the Northwest. The plan was to get a development commission in order to address some of the challenges, you know, arising from the terrorism activities. And so that Northeast Development Commission was mooted. It was passed in the National Assembly, and so it had to do with special funds for special projects. So over the years now, other regions have been asking for their own development commissions. Now we have the Northwest Development Commission and the Southeast signed by the president into law a few days ago. So everybody's looking for that. The South Development Commission also is in the works. It was stepped down the other day. So the argument by some is that, you know, or by this article, you know, from the Guardian is saying these are just special purpose vehicles. They are commissions of development, yet you do not have development any other.
It's really... It's funny. I mean, let's even look at it from the area of it's increasing the cost of governance. Now, you have the president who said he wants to implement the Oronsoye report, which seeks to cut down on the number of public agencies. And now you are creating more. Now,
I don't think it's an agency.
No, it's just even one of the issues. No, it is, because it's going to access public funds. Either maybe 1% of VAT or 1% of FAC or something. I mean, that's how these agencies are funded. And then
it's not an agency, it's just a commission, but
yes,
I get the point.
I mean, still it's a government body, more or less, even if it's not an agency. But I don't know, it seems that since the Niger Delta NDDC was created, you've had others trying to create their own interventionist, regional interventionist commissions. So there's one that I'm also sponsored in the last Senate to, Southwest Development Commission, which they want to do. Senator Ekpanyong tried to sponsor, in fact, he sponsored it actually, but was stepped down, the South-South Development Commission, when you already have NDDC. You know, of course, people like Edwin Clark will argue that NDDC should be strictly for the Niger Delta, strictly for the South-South, and those states that are not in the South-South should be pulled out. But look at Southeast Development Commission now. It's for the Southeast. You have Anambra there, and then you still have Anambra in the NDDC. That's number one. Number two is that these agencies, look at NDDC, what have they accomplished in the last 13, 14 years of their existence? Remember that the House of Reps was investigating Ponde and the late Cairo Ojukwu and others who were running that agency. And then Ponde then said, he was falling sick and then started getting ill. So
Well, it's I mean, a lot of people, there are a lot of opinions about this, those that are for and those that are against. Are they so?
Yeah, so what we've seen is that we try to sort of appease everybody. This has now become something to appeal to regional disparities or to fix regional disparities. So everybody comes and says, you know, we are marginalized, we need this. But if you look at the reason why the NDDC was set up in the first instance, you understand it was for the community that has been given so much but receiving so little. Then the question you ask yourself is, how much of that has been accomplished? What the NDDC was set up, the commotion and the you know, confusion that surrounds funding, management of the NDDC overshadows the main purpose which it was set up for. And that has been the instance. You mentioned just one instance. If you look at the history of the NDDC, it has always been the case of management. If it's not interim, why is it not permanent? Who are the board members? Should they be, you know, from the region that they are trying to occupy the spaces on the board, rather than fixing the issues of the community itself? But you cannot take away the fact that this appeals to regional disparities. And I was going to say, you know, when the Southeast Development Commission was passed, I did not know that the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives could move. Did you see his dance steps? So while I did not know he was a dancer, you know, so while some people are celebrating it, there are others who will raise the question about the effectiveness and the efficiencies of these commissions that we are setting up. Why are we really setting them up?
Right.
We need to get that fair. If we understand that this is beyond regional sentiments, this is beyond regional clamor for in cases of disparities, then perhaps we will get it right to say, do we really need these commissions, particularly when we have ministries, departments, and agencies that sometimes, or more often than not, should cater to the problems that are raised in these regions. We also have governors. We have state house of assemblies. Yeah. We have, hopefully, effective and efficient local governments, you know, councillors and chairmen that should step up to the plate. So you then ask yourself, why do we really need this commission? That's a question I don't think we have really answered.
Right.
But until we answer that question, we will not get it right. We will continue to see them as conduits for corruption and siphoning of funds. Yeah. Because when you ask the people, I'm sure, well, you know, those who are celebrating them, including the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, you know, with his dance moves, which I cannot forget, while they're celebrating it, if you do ask the people from the communities, I'm almost certain they would tell you these commissions have not lived up to the expectation, whether it's the NDDC or the NEDC, the Northeast Development Commission, which is supposed to revitalize and bring back, you know, livelihood and life to the region that has been battered by the Boko Haram insurgency for over a decade now.
Yeah, Andela, please jump in.
Yeah, I was even going to say that. Look at NDDC. You have IMO there. You have Abia State there. Now you have Southeast Development Commission. You also have IMO there, you have, so it seems a lot of this, there's a lot of overlapping going on. And remember the off your mic honorable minister incident, where it was alleged that a lot of lawmakers and all that, they turned NDDC to some sort of cash cow. So it's not even been living up to its billing. I don't see how these other ones being created are going to make any sort of difference.
Well, people from the Northeast, where they had the Northeast Development Commission, would tell you that it had done quite a bit of work in order to restore that region. And then, of course, now you have the Northwest and the Southeast. The point, though, is about leadership and governance. The commissions are already created, you cannot roll them back. So moving forward, making sure that they have the right leadership and governance, making sure also that they are in touch with the real people on ground in those communities to identify projects that they need. Because sometimes, or most times, governments, you know, at the federal level or at the state house just sit down and assume what people need and require from their communities and just go on and start doing those things, as opposed to engaging with the communities to really find out What exactly do we need? For the Southeast Development Commission, it talked about environmental challenges such as funding erosion issues in that part of the country. And then, of course, the Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Kalu, talked about after the war, Nigeria had said it had to be the 3 R's, but the Southeast was not there was no funding that was given to the Southeast in order to restore the devastation of that region from the war. It has a point there. So it's part of what they're going to be addressing with this commission. But there's also the part of sustainable funding. The federal government will have some monies to pull into this, but the federal government cannot fund it alone and for a very long time. So they have to think out of the box of other ways of sustainably financing these commissions and the projects that they have to work on. If there's transparency, if there's transparency
accountability
and
accountability,
perhaps it will make a difference. So we'll be watching, we'll be watching is the new development, and then we'll see how it goes. Let's go to the Guardian newspaper again. Yes, we have the story on the Guardian about the President General of Ohaneze Ndigbo, Chief Emmanuel Iwanyanwu, has passed at the age of 82. What a loss. He was a businessman, politician, and publisher. He published the Champion newspaper. He was a prominent personality and had made his own contribution to his community. Really accomplished man, Eniola.
Very accomplished. I still remember seeing him in church at St. Matthew's Anglican Church here in Abuja some months ago. It's a very, very
so you're an Anglican?
Oh, definitely. And he was very, very generous to the church, I'd say. He was a knight of St. Nicholas, and there was really nothing the church was doing that he wasn't really involved in, He had a very wide and diverse financial portfolio, which could compare to MK Abiola. He was in media, he was in aviation, he was in sports, he was in the hotel business. Wanyanwu was everywhere, and he was very, very accomplished. And this is a man who started from humble beginnings. His education was interrupted by the Civil War. He was in the rockets department of the Biafra army too at that time, at the age of about 17 or 18 or thereabout. And after the war, he was able to, go back to school, where he graduated from Nsukka in 1971, And since then, this man has just been on a steady rise to the top. Just before his death, he was among those who was pushing for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. He had even personally guaranteed that, I will stand as a guarantor for him, that the federal government should release him to me and all that. I can vouch for his behavior and all. So he was really at the forefront of restoring lasting peace in the Southeast. And it's very unfortunate that, he spent just a year or so in leadership as leader of Ohaneze, less than 2 years, because I think George Obiozo passed on.
Yes, passed on, yes.
So it's a huge loss, not just to the Southeast, but to the country at large, as the president said yesterday.
Yeah, and listening to his profile that you have ably narrated or recounted here, his life is a testament to hard work and determination. Like you said, coming from humble beginnings to get to the top and achieve all that he was able to do at this one.
Yeah, he was different things to different people. And when you just look at the outpouring of eulogies that has, come from various people, from the president to the man on the streets in Imo State that was interviewed yesterday when the news broke, you can tell that this man, you can tell the sort of individual we have lost. And I think Eniola is right that this is not just a loss to the Southeast or to the Ohaneze Ndigbo group, but to Nigeria in general. He was very forefront in the whole Nnamdi Kanu release, and he thought, this was the best option for returning peace to the region of the Southeast. He thought, with the release of Nnamdi Kanu, we could get it right back in that region where we've seen socio-economic activities grind to a halt, every Monday, and the days Nnamdi Kanu is supposed to appear in court. So he was a towering figure. Our hearts do go out to the family and, his loved ones at this time. Age 82.
Yes.
Again, with the outpouring, he lived a good life. You know, they say it's not how long you live, but the impact that you make while you're on earth. And I think he has ticked that box with this outpouring of eulogies we've seen.
It definitely has. 82 has been a good run, as we can see. I mean, he also took over from an equally brilliant man as the President General of Ohanese Ndigbo, Professor George Obiozo, who was also, I think he was less than 3 years on the position as well before his pass due to illness. He was also aged, so I think that people will look forward to see who next will take over that mantle of running the Pan-Igbo organization. So condolences to the Wanyanwu family. He's from Imo State, by the way. Okay, let's move on to Punch newspaper this morning. In Punch, we'll be looking at the story, Tinubu rallies NSA, monarchs as hunger protest looms. President meets APC governors, Oni, Sultan, clerics, as planned protests gain momentum. Opposition charges Tinubu to address Nigerians. The army, DSS, alleged plot to force regime change. And you were eager to say something.
But I'm sorry, Eniola. Hold your fire, hold your thoughts. Let's go on a quick break here on Daybreak. When we return to the front page of the Punch newspaper for you.
And the fire will continue.
Glad to have you back. If you have just joined us, you're watching Daybreak, and it's the paper review on the show with Dr. Constance Ikoku and our guest analyst for the day, Eniola Akinkoto. Welcome back, guys.
Yeah, thank you. This one. Before we went on break, we were looking at Punch newspaper regarding President Tinubu rallying everyone, literally everyone at this point, against this protest. Eniola, take it away.
Let me start by saying that I don't really envy the president, really, because he inherited a very bad situation.
You're using the APC line.
No, it's not the APC line. During the electioneering, Emir Sanusi said it, that he doesn't even know why anybody wants to be president of Nigeria.
I say it all the time.
That you are going to inherit a very, very bad situation, and people are going to hate you.
This has been a long life ambition. So he wanted it.
Oh, definitely. So now, of course, the president has a history of protest himself, and so he knows what is going on. He knows that, look, if I allow these things to go on, it could lead to the toppling of my administration. That is what he sees.
He doesn't have a choice.
I'm saying this is the way he sees it. Now, the people who want to protest are drawing inspiration from what's going on in Kenya. You know, and you also have to look at what is happening in the West African sub-region where you are having coups. This is a president who assumed office on the lowest winning rate in modern Nigerian history.
Not even up to 50%.
It was 37% actually.
Oh, man, we have to even talk about that.
Exactly. So you already have a lot of people who didn't vote for him. So this protest is going to resonate with them naturally. Look at the FCT. The president didn't have up to 20% of the votes in the FCT. And it's going to be one of the epicenters of this protest. Now, there's nothing the government can do to stop it, really. It's a constitutional right to protest, so people should be allowed to protest, but protest peacefully. The president said it yesterday, so that, look, I also engaged in protests, but it wasn't violent. The best that the security agencies can do now is just to ensure that it is peaceful. I keep wondering, too, they said, oh, they are afraid that it's going to be hijacked. And I keep wondering, how is it that no pro-government demonstration has ever been hijacked before? Why is it always anti-government protests that are being hijacked? And so it is the duty now of the security agencies to ensure that it is not hijacked. Now, DSS said yesterday too that it is political. Of course it's political. It's called end bad governance. What is politics? Politics is anything that the people do in order to influence their leaders, or whatever leaders do in order to influence their people. Of course it's going to be political. It's political, so it doesn't take away the legitimacy of what these people are protesting against. They said, oh, that is sponsored. Is there any protest that is not sponsored? Really?
By people or whoever?
Yes, because they're going to print T-shirts, they're going to do, placards, they're going to transport people.
They're going to buy water, food,
so the president himself even said he sponsored protests. The June 12th or something, he also sponsored. So what we're saying is that, look, let it just be peaceful. That's the most important thing. And it behoves on the security agencies to ensure that these protests are peaceful. What happened during the NSAS too, if you remember, there were viral videos of thugs in Abuja being ferried in SUVs to go and disrupt protests.
That's probably what is going to happen in this instance.
Because if that happens, then things could spiral out of control.
So it means, the government itself being the one to cause chaos amidst the protest.
Exactly. And, as Falana said it too, 2 days ago.
Adesua, please come in here. Going to the extent of involving the Oni of Ife, the Sultan of Sokoto, and every highly placed Nigerian, don't you think these people even risk the wrath of Nigerians or the anger against them for, they will be seen as part of the problem,
Hopefully not, because I think that the thinking behind it, when the president met with various groups yesterday, including the traditional rulers led by the Sultan of Sokoto, Sahad Abubakar III, and the Oni of Ife, is to actually take the message of the government to the people. So the thinking is that these traditional rulers are close to the people. Like the Oni said yesterday, that their palaces are not close to the people that they rule. So ideally, these people should be transmitting the policies and the actions of governments to the people. And that's why the president had brought them in, to tell the people first, to show them what his administration has done so far. And I think that is very unfortunate because, they say, take the bull by the horns early in the day, let it hit hard. Unfortunately, I think that's what has happened to the Bola Tinubu administration, which has just been in power for less than 2 years, just about 1 year. But we know that the twin policies of removing subsidy and the flotation of the naira, the exchange rate policy, has snowballed into what we have seen today, and high inflation, food crisis, and all of that. So he's trying to transmit his message and his actions to the people. Now, how the people react and how they take it from the traditional rulers or the Islamic religious leaders he met yesterday is now left to be seen. Can the people actually trust? What is the trust capital between these people who are supposed to be seen as custodians of culture, tradition, who rule the people, and, the reality on ground, whether the people want to believe it or not? So over the years, I think there's been trust deficits, which makes it very difficult to translate such messages. And, yesterday I was just thinking to myself, I bet perhaps the only group we have not seen, being and we might likely see those, maybe the journalists. We have seen the traditional rulers, we have seen, but we are doing our job, to transmit all of these meetings.
They are also pleading with the media to report the stories, in a way that doesn't put the government in a tight corner.
But finally, what I just wanted to say is that these meetings with the president, with various groups, we do hope that it culminates to the president himself speaking to the people, because we've seen him speaking through people to the people. It would be nice to see him speak to the people.
I think it also goes beyond speaking to the people. It also has to do with walking the talk. So you're saying that, look, the country is facing its worst cost of living crisis in like 30 years, with food inflation at 40%, unemployment rate high, poverty high, insecurity and all that. You're telling people that they should, just cut their clothes according their clothes according to their cloth now. And you have a situation where, amid this hardship, you are buying a new presidential jet, you are running the largest cabinet in the history of the country.
And then an unperforming cabinet, an unperforming cabinet. When you look at that performance review that the president promised Nigerians, they even have a special assistant whose job it is to follow the performance of ministers. Some of them have scored 0, done absolutely nothing. So that's one of the reasons why people are frustrated, and Yola.
Oh, certainly. I mean, so the president has to do more of walking the talk. If you're telling people that, this is time for austerity, you also have to show it, Why, look at what happened in Kenya. It was after the protests erupted and blew over that, you started to, okay, we're going to cut down on salaries, we're going to, do this and do that. These are things that you could have done before things spiraled out of control. So there's still time. I think yesterday's meeting with the Islamic clerics too was strategic, because today's Friday, and we know that, of course, every Muslim is supposed to be in mosque today. I'm very, very sure that today is going to dominate the sermons in the mosques, and they're going to tell people that please do not
calm down.
Just calm down, do not take to the streets and all that. So a lot is going on. We just hope that everything is peaceful.
Indeed. Now, so guaranteeing the peaceful protest is the responsibility of the police, which I think the IGP has acknowledged to an extent to say, you can protest, but let it not snowball. That is the work of the police, and we do hope that they carry that out. But I also wanted to say something, that there seems to be so much emphasis and attention on the president. When I hear conversations about this protest, it looks as if there's one man, just one man running the entire country, and one man responsible for all of the challenges that people are facing up until the grassroots. I don't hear so much about people talking about their governors or their lawmakers, both at the state and national levels. What happened to those people? Are they exempted from performance? Are they, you know, in a cocoon of their own that they cannot contribute, you know, to national development? Why is there so much emphasis on the president and the presidency?
Well,
it's something I've, you know, queried about this protest.
So, well, this what the federal government is talking the most. The federal government gets the largest share of revenue from this country. The federal government, literally, the kind of federalism we practice is not true federalism. The federal government is overpowering. It's overpowering. So yes, you have to adjust that. We've had this conversation for many years. But before we rest this topic, one thing, when you mentioned that the president won by 37%, it shows that it's part of the reasons why he is unpopular. Of course, in addition to other economic indices and problems that are ongoing, which yes, he inherited, but it is part of his party. He has been with the APC. He heavily supported former President Muhammadu Buhari to become the president, so he will share in part of the blame. He brought him into office. The point, though, is, so when we have a political system such as this, it's the first time last year when we had 3 candidates run for the presidential election, so the votes were shared between them. Initially, before, it used to be that you have at least
3 run for the
so the main contenders.
Yes.
So before, it used to be that at least the person that won the election got at least 50% of the votes, or slightly over 50%. So in future, if we're going to be having more major candidates running, there should be a law that says you have to have at least 50% or more than 50% of the vote. If there is none at the first run, then there should be a second run. I think it's something to think about. You know, let's move on to the international headlines this morning. We'll look at Daily Graphic newspaper. Daily Graphic is from Ghana. Decade remand without trial. 12 gain freedom at last. 12 people accused of murder, stealing, having unnatural carnal knowledge, among other offenses, have been discharged. They were let go from the Nsawan medium security prison in the eastern region of Ghana. Many of them had never stepped outside the walls of the prison since they were taken in there. They have spent time between 13 months to 11 years, you know, and their remands had expired, and they were left there to rot. I mean, it's a case of trying to get justice for people who accuse other people and then ending up meting out injustice to people. You are there for 11 years without trial, Eniola.
It's a very, very sad narrative. I didn't know that this sort of things happen in Ghana. And one wonders why, I haven't read the full report, but one wonders why it's during election season now that you're releasing them.
Interesting.
It's appalling.
Doesn't really have to tie to the election. I mean, there's just 12 people.
For 12 years, 2012.
There will be more, actually, because this
without
is
trial.
So the full story is that this release is arising from a special project and intervention to reduce overcrowding in the prisons. So it will be ongoing. There will be other cases. So what they have done is to set up a special mobile court to quickly try people, dispense justice, and, you know, get them out of prison. But so it doesn't have to do with election exactly.
But how were they detained for 12 years without trial? Because, I mean, Nigeria has a very high rate of, you know, people in detention without trial, but I've never even heard of 12 years before without trial.
11 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 11 years.
Yeah.
The longest, there was a report I did some years ago Then I think it was 4 years or so, or 5 years. But 12 years, I've never heard of it before. 12 years without trial. So what happened? Is it that, was there a court order, empowering the authorities to keep them there?
No, so their remands had expired, so they just forgot them there. I think it speaks to the weakness of the system, the failure of the justice system. That's just what it is, Adeswa, right?
And it's not just only in Ghana, and this should not, it's not new to see this, because under our own very noses, it happens. It's what we see in our correctional facilities, where people are forgotten, people who are there, awaiting trial. It's mind-boggling numbers, and it speaks to the judicial reform and the justice system. It's not just in Africa. We also see it in the UK. It was a top election campaign matter about having to free prisoners earlier than expected because of the overcrowdedness of their prisons. They haven't built enough prisons over the years. And so they are facing these issues. And there's been the controversy about if you release them, then you're likely to have more people return to prison because they are not reformed. And, just because you want to make space, then you're going to have more. It's counterproductive. But that's a conversation they're having in the UK.
And they're also deporting people too.
Exactly.
But in the UK, at least, they've undergone trial. They've been convicted.
They've been convicted.
Not that you 12 years without any conviction whatsoever. You just left to languish.
Indeed. So it all speaks to the issue of our justice systems and our reforms. Why do we have so many people in correctional facilities that don't need to be there for that long? Why do you have so many people in prisons who are so forgotten? I heard, very recently the story of one man. It was very pathetic. He had been there for over 2 decades. Over 2 decades. Wrongfully arrested, wrongfully accused and arrested, and then just forgotten. And then he kept going to the courts, and there was nothing substantial. So he only gained freedom with the pardon of the governor, I think on May 29, which was June 12 rather, on Democracy Day, very recently. And I think that was in Oyo State or Ekiti State, one of the southwest states. You hear very pathetic stories like that. People who lost majority of their adult lives and cannot gain them back because we do not have the proper systems in place. And I think the Minister of Interior has also been talking about that, looking at the overcrowdedness of our correctional facilities. What are the issues? Why do we have it overcrowded? What's going on?
I think it's also related to judicial reforms, the need for judicial reforms. Now, in the judiciary, the way things work, if a judge is sitting on a case, the moment that judge is transferred or is elevated, promoted to another court, his case had to start all over again. I know of someone whose case had to start again twice. And the person had to remain in prison. It was alleged armed robbery. He was finally let go after like 6 years. But he had wasted 6 years of his life because of these sort of things. And also the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015 empowers judges to visit detention facilities. If you are waiting trial for too long and maybe it's not a huge crime, maybe it's a minor offense, the judge has the power to release you on the spot or to order that your trial be, fast-tracked. But what we see is that a lot of judges do not do this. So it's also, as I said, it's also an indictment on the judiciary.
And talking about people losing their lives 15, 20 years and they are wrongly accused, United States of America comes to mind. I mean, they have the largest prisons in the world. They have the most people in prison. In fact, they also have private prisons where people invest in private prisons and people are working, and it's like almost a business. That country, it's like a developed country, but the kind of things that happen, a lot of people, at the end of the day, you hear stories about them being released after a very long time and they were wrongly accused. Definitely in Nigeria, you don't want that to be happening. So many problems from different sectors of this country, but this one is something that probably needs to be examined. We're talking about Ghana, but it also happens in Nigeria.
Sure.
So we'll look at the other story on the international headlines, The Independent, UK. Officers suspended as outrage grows over head stamp arrest. as we don't have, as we can see from that photo on the front page, the officer had his feet on the man's shoulder when he's on the floor. Hundreds of protesters gathered to express their discontent over that behavior. They chanted "Shame on you" at the police station, where the man was tasered and kicked on the ground and rough handled. They have a right to be disgusted by this. But usually in the UK, the police is usually gentle and nice and speaking to you in hushed tones that you can even barely hear them. So seeing this on the front page, it's a little bit shocking for a lot of people, and that's why they went to protest and say, "Shame on you, the police, you cannot be doing this." Niala.
It's a sad, very, very sad incident. This thing is one trend I've noticed is that it usually, whenever you have this sort of police brutality, it usually affects minority groups. So in the US, it was George Floyd and
yes.
Many of them who are the black community. This particular incident, so I think the guy is an Arab, is someone of Arab descent or so. And while investigations are ongoing, they need to also determine if it was, a race-related crime. And that officer has been suspended, but I think he needs to be sacked completely.
He has been suspended.
He needs to be sacked, not just suspended, really. It happened also, I think earlier in the year too, in Paris, where it was also an immigrant who was shot by the police as well. It led to protests, led to riots and all that. So the authorities really need to, in different countries, the US, the UK, especially now that you have a rise in right-wing nationalism and extremism, where people are always going after immigrants, going after those who are not of their own race. It's happening in the US as well. Tensions are also rising with Trump saying that, he's going to embark on the largest single deportation in the history of the United States. So you have, once you have this sort of phobia, xenophobia and all that, you see such attacks. We expect the police to rise above it though.
When you think about Trump and the way he talks about immigration, his wife is an immigrant. Even from her accent, you see that she's a first-generation American. So it beats your imagination why someone who lives with a first-generation immigrant and has her family, it was only a couple of years ago that her parents naturalized as Americans. How do you have the audacity to talk about immigrants in that way?
His running mate, J.D. Vance, his own wife too is also Indian. So Indian descent. Okay. And he too is also, he's even more of a right-wing nationalist than Trump. So although she was born in the US, but her parents were, they came in from India. And so it shows the contradictions really in politics. You see Trump, his own wife is from, I think, Slovenia.
Yeah, one of
Melania is from
East European country.
Yeah, I think she's from, not Melania, I'm trying to remember her name now.
Her name is
Melania.
Melania. Melania
okay.
Trump,
Yeah,
yes.
Melania. So she's from Slovenia, and then his running mate, J.D. Vance, the wife is from India. And yet these two are running against immigration and all that. So it's really funny. It's just like, what's his name too? Rishi Sunak. Sunak is of Indian heritage. And he's the one that was saying, people are going to be deported to Rwanda as part of their program and all that. So it just shows the contradictions really in politics. Well,
it was a Tory policy, not necessarily a Rishi Sunak policy. But talking about police brutality, the US, I think you see a lot of that, and people are so shocked that in a so-called developed country, the level of police brutality in the US. I mean, the US police is not joking with you. They're not playing with you. They stop you on the road. You better, respect and, answer to what you're told. And it's been a crisis in that country, especially race-related police brutality. This one. Indeed,
racism is still very much with us, whether we like it or not. And, when you speak about Trump, one has to chuckle. When it comes to Trump, he's very selective. So it's no surprise. But to this issue, this particular issue happened at the Manchester airport, I believe. And there was a scuffle. Some policemen were injured in the incident. And, there has been reaction from the government and the people in Manchester and the UK in general saying, the force in response was quite a lot. It was too much. But they were responding to an incident at the airport, and this happened. We also understand from latest reports that the the young man whose head was stomped, his situation is getting worse because it was serious head injury. I mean, it was horrific to watch that video when I saw it. He kept stomping his head, kicking him while he was face down on the ground. So I wonder what else. I mean, it's literally kicking the man on the floor, a man who is already on the floor. And then he kept kicking him on his head and his body. And we'll watch this space because he's been suspended. But I think, like Eniola said, it needs to go beyond suspension. It's also what we've seen with the deputy sheriff in the U.S. in the recent incident, the killing of a woman who called thinking there had been an intruder in her house. And, he shot her several times. He's also been suspended. But there has to be more serious repercussions for police brutality anywhere in the world where you say it. In Nigeria, we say the police is your friend. Exactly. Yeah. We say the police is your friend, but sometimes you have to be very careful the level of friendship you have with the police. But again, there are so many issues to it. We cannot pick one side, and I don't think time will permit us to speak to the issues around, police brutality wherever in the world it is, and the actions that must be taken. But like I said, time is not on our side. It's been 1 hour of analysis of the front pages of local and international papers for you this Friday morning. Dr. Constance Ikoko is very excited.
I
it's
am.
Friday.
And your life hope you are.
And then it's excited.
We should do a drink.
I hope that's a coffee.
So
Well, I'll be back here again with Daybreak tomorrow morning. See you then. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.